Everyone, and welcome to this special City Age episode. We're living through two historic transitions, the ongoing global move into cities and the worldwide development of the digital commons. Today, we're going to the metaverse. We're exploring the role cities will play in it, from urban design to events to economic opportunities. This episode is brought to you by City Age in partnership with the Canada-Korea Business Association, Populous, AI&BC, Vancouver's Frontier Collective, the Royal Bank of Canada, and KOTRA. I'm Zara Alani. Thank you for having me today. I'm your anchor for today's program. I'm a seasoned broadcaster and trained meteorologist with a huge affinity towards sustainability. For today's show, we had almost 250 register, and we look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. So for me to do that, I'd love for you to go down to the comments section. And in the chat section, make sure to direct your comments to everyone. This way, everyone can engage and we can all read your comments. Now, when panelists are up and you have direct questions to them, we do want you to change the settings to panelists so that they directly see that. Otherwise, it doesn't quite get to them. So right now, if you can go down to the comment section and tell us where you're from, remember to choose everybody. Now, we want to make sure that this event is interactive as possible. So in addition to you commenting, we would like you to tell us where you're zooming from, and we will be engaging in poll questions. So before we get to our first guest, here's a question for the audience. It'll pop up on your screen and you've got 4 options there. Question is, how important is it that cities start to plan for their role in the metaverse? Please share your answer with us and we will reveal the answer later in the show. Now, to kick us off, we have some opening comments from Minister Councillor Tudor Hera, head of the Trade and Investment Team for the Canadian Embassy to South Korea. He has been a Canadian diplomat since 2000. For the past 4 years, he has worked to promote trade and investment, most notably having reorganized and expanded the Can Export program. I'll pass
Hello,
it on
everyone.
to you, Minister.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Annyeonghamshimnika. So a big thank you to Mr. Sangvan, the former president of the CKBA, and Mr. Richard Hall, the new president of the association. Congratulations for organizing this event and inviting my team and I to participate. It is also a pleasure to meet virtually my counterpart in Vancouver, Mr. Song. So what's happening? For the last 2 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically increased the way people connect and use the digital world. This was not always by choice, but I think it's difficult today to think that we will go back to a less interconnected world. It is therefore not a surprise that this has accelerated the development of new technologies, new ways we connect and share experiences virtually. It has brought the metaverse from what was science fiction into a concrete project with significant investments. Now, for many of us, the first metaverse is what we create with a background like mine to protect our privacy, but also to send messages. But I look forward to seeing much more creative explanations of the metaverse during this session. Now, Canada has a history of leadership in communications and in innovation. This has been the base for the Canada of today, the development of our world-leading expertise in artificial intelligence, in gaming, AR, VR technologies, and digital visual effects. All of these are key components for the construction of the metaverse and a wide range of similar applications. This innovation in Canada is supported by abundant talent. Canada accounts to close to 4% of developers globally, making it the 5th most represented developer talent in the world. However, beyond numbers, Canada's traditional role as a bridge between North America and Europe, as well as its ambitious and long-standing immigration policy, supercharges this talent by ensuring a level of diversity in perspective and competencies few other countries can compare with. This is also complemented by Canada's values and a deeply human-centered approach when it comes to technology. As an example, Canada is one of the world leaders in the ethical use of artificial intelligence. It is therefore no surprise that Korean companies such as Samsung, LG, Naver, Netmarble, and many others have today a foothold in Canada and are now active contributors to this vibrant ecosystem. Now, Korea has a unique story of development and success, and its prosperity is deeply rooted in a commitment to innovation and technology. This commitment extends today to the metaverse and its wide range of applications. It is supported by strong government policies, experimentation, such as the development of Seoul City's virtual communication ecosystem, and supported by established technologies such as Korea's 5G service. As usual, Korea has been moving very, very fast. And this creates opportunities for collaboration and business between our two countries and our mutual companies. I hope, therefore, that events such as this one will be triggers for these concrete collaborations. From our side, at the Canadian Embassy, my team represents the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service here in Seoul. And we will do our best to support Canadian and Korean stakeholders. What we do for Canadian companies is prepare them for the Korean market, connect them to potential buyers, avoid and resolve potential issues, as well as provide funding for their travel and their business in Korea through the Can Export program. For Korean companies, we help source Canadian products and services and answer questions and accompany Korean companies in their investments in Canada. And for both, we matchmake, we connect, we help build joint R&D collaborations to help develop, validate, and commercialize innovative products and services. And this may include as well funding through our bilateral innovation agreement. So I encourage you to look at our embassy website or the Trade Commissioner Service website to hear more about us. So thank you again and have a great session. I'll be watching it with lots of interest. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Minister Councillor Tudor-Hara. Please join me now in welcoming our next guest, Consul General Hae Young-song of the Republic of Korea in Vancouver. Consul General, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm pleased to be here at today's seminar on cities, AI, and the metaverse. Today's topic is a relatively new concept, and it is so exciting to see so many Korean and Canadian businesses already thriving in this field, showing a very promising future for collaboration. The goal of today's seminar is not only to educate on this complex subject, but to provide a chance for the best of Korea and Canada's tech industry to come together and form invaluable contacts and partnerships. I think that we can all agree that experiencing a global pandemic reinforced the value of virtual spaces, as well as their necessity for the future. This is a pivotal time for the global community, and it is essential that we seize the opportunities that the metaverse provides and continue to expand our knowledge to ensure a successful digital future together. As long-time economic partners and close friends, it makes perfect sense for Korea and Canada to strengthen our partnership in the metaverse. Korea is very eager to embrace this new age of technology. This enthusiasm can be seen in Seoul's ambitious plan to become the first city to enter the metaverse. In Metaverse Seoul, residents will be able to experience a virtual communication ecosystem as early as 2023. That allows them to visit cultural sites or submit civil complaints by accessing the metaverse on their smartphones. Korea as a whole has invested significantly in creating world-class digital technologies, positioning itself as a tech leader on the global stage. In addition to these government commitments, leading Korean tech companies are also advancing the digital future in a meaningful way. They see the potential that Web3 holds and are not wasting time in investing to make this idea a reality. This rapidly growing field can only become stronger with international cooperation and strategic partnerships. It is then completely understandable that when looking for collaborators, Korea's eye is drawn to Canada, and more specifically, Vancouver. And one of the fastest growing tech hubs in North America, Vancouver is home to so much talent in the tech industry. Today, we will hear from several Vancouver-based companies, which speaks to the existing thriving market for the metaverse in Vancouver. As the new Consul General for Korea in Vancouver, I look forward to witnessing increased collaboration between Korea and BC, similar to the successful partnerships we have formed in countless other fields. I have no doubt we will witness many productive discussions today, and I look forward to growing my own knowledge on this subject. We are fortunate to have so many distinguished speakers participating, including representatives from cutting-edge companies. I'd like to extend a warm thank you to CKBA President, Mr. Richard Hall, for CKBA's critical work of bringing Koreans and Canadians together to engage with timely topics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Consul General Hae Young-sung of the Republic of Korea in Vancouver. Now we have the results from our last poll question. It's going to pop up on your screen, and it looks like nearly half of you chose the first option. And as we go along, we have another poll question for you. We're going to have more throughout the episode. It's going to pop up on your screen. And the question is, what's the biggest opportunity for cities in the metaverse? There are 4 options attached to that. Please choose your answer, what you think is the best choice, and we will reveal the answer as we go along in the show. Now, our next speakers will be discussing DeFi and the metaverse and opportunities for BC, Korea, and broader cross-national collaboration. So please help me to welcome the next group of speakers. First up, James Hursthouse, CEO and founder of Departure Lounge and a 20-year veteran of the global games and digital media sector. He was a contributing author to the Metaverse Roadmap white paper in 2007 and has been developing initiatives that could be considered precursors to the current metaverse boom for over 15 years. We also have Luke Shim, an investor at Brink.fi. He has a deep experience in blockchain and decentralized finance. The Brink token protocol provides an alternative token economy that is empirically decentralized, backed and holds real or intrinsic value. Luke and James, I'll leave it to you. Take it away.
Hey, thanks very much there, Zara. Nice to meet everybody, and thanks for your time this afternoon. Just to let you know, I'm in a hotel room here in San Francisco, ready for GDC. So if the internet connection isn't great, I apologize for that in advance. Anyway, let's get going because I know there isn't too much time for this talk this afternoon. And thanks very much for the great introduction there. I don't think we need to spend very much more time on that piece there. So I think we'll just get on with a few slides to set the context for this afternoon. And then really, obviously we're very fortunate to have Luke here, given his background in finance and then government, and then most recently in tokenization, crypto and blockchain, to provide some sort of insights into what we think is going on with Seoul and its announcement and how exciting that is, and opportunities for us around that. Just to set the context, as it said in the intro, I have been in the games industry for nearly, I guess, 22 years. And I just wanted to make the point that why this is very interesting is because you can always look at Seoul and South Korea as being really innovative when it comes to digital innovations there. So esports, for example, went to the World Cyber Games in Seoul in 2001. And I was fortunate enough to live through the very early stages of free-to-play gaming, which you could argue was invented by Nexon with Quiz back in 1999. So really, South Korea has always been a digital pioneer. And I remember very clearly, just to set the context around metaverse and some of the stuff that's going on now, how everybody was incredulous. And it was like, nobody's ever going to watch esports on television. That's ridiculous, right? But obviously, we know what happened with things like League of Legends and 74 million peak viewers for the most recent World Finals. Esports audience now 4 times bigger than the NFL. And then similarly with free to play, right? It's a Ponzi scheme. It's never going to last, right? And then as a result of that, of course, now pretty much every game in existence is free to play, and it's become the normal way of billing for games. That's why it's so interesting at the moment to see what's going on with Korea and its announcement around the Metaverse City, because as always, I think it's a precursor to what we will see proliferating around the world more generally. I think it's useful before we move forward to just talk a little bit about what we think the metaverse is, though. And I like to go with Matthew Ball, very active venture capitalist in the space, who says that the metaverse is a collective virtual shared space, including the sum of all virtual worlds in the internet, in some cases blended with real life. And again, I think as you'll see, the Seoul initiative is very blended with real life in many ways. But also metaverse serves as a functional successor to the web, only this time with greater reach, time spent in commercial activity, generating even greater upside than the current internet economic upside, which is obviously why so many people are investing so heavily into the space. And in its full version, it becomes the gateway to most digital experiences, a key component of all physical ones, and the next great labor platform, which is quite interesting. So just as a quick piece of background, the Departure Lounge is a new company that we put together to really be at the center of 4 trends. Number one, developments in game technology and game engines. Second, proliferation of spatial software like Roblox and Minecraft and all these kinds of things. And third, online communities, affinity, what we call the passion economy. But a lot of people ask me, well, if that's what you're doing, isn't it 2003, June 2003 when Second Life launched? And the answer for me is actually there's a key component that added to those 3, which has unlocked the metaverse. And that's the 4th component of blockchain, DeFi, and tokenization. I think with only the first 3, you get this. But with the addition of blockchain, DeFi, and tokenization, you actually start to get this, which is Web3, interoperable games, and those kinds of things, right? So, as we looked at South Korea's announcement around Seoul, it's very interesting to see that the government is building a digital twin, like a virtual city, which obviously offers services and things like that. But at the same time, we're interested to know, because right now NFT games in particular, which we think are sort of practicing for the future of digital value, are actually not permitted in South Korea. And so that's an interesting piece to say, is this a digital twin, or is it genuinely an example of the metaverse initiative? A lot of folks, a lot of doubters will say video games already does what the metaverse promises. But as I said before, I think if you look at Fortnite and Roblox and Magic, the Gathering being video games, and then you look at Decentraland, Sandbox, and Axie being genuine examples of where we're going with Web3 and interoperability and the creation of true transfer of digital assets with value, which is what Luke knows a lot about, I know. In some ways, these sort of NFT games we're practicing for non-gaming applications, in line with what Matthew Ball has been talking about, the future of digital work. And here's a little bit about Web3 in general. We're really looking at a decentralized finance scenario, NFTs, sovereign virtual goods, self-sovereign identity for users, decentralized governance, and decentralized cloud and compute, right? And so I think as a result of that, this is why it's very interesting to bring somebody like Luke into the conversation, who's been able to analyze what's been going on with the Digital Soul project and sort of discuss it. On the other hand, for example, you can look at jurisdictions like Miami, who are doing really creative things with, decentralized autonomous organizations around civic engagement. And there are some components of that, with what's going on with Seoul as well. Anyhow, so that's the preamble. And I wanted to sort of open it up to Luke and say, as somebody whose career spans government, finance, and now, very focused in on tokenization and blockchain, what is your take on the recent announcement about the $180 $7 million investment into Digital Soul.
Yep. Thank you, James. Hello, everyone from Seoul, Korea. Yeah, so just to maybe continue on what James was speaking about, Korea has had actually a relatively long history in gaming and virtual worlds, dating back 20 years to Cyworld, and then the development of mobile and online gaming. Korea is top 3 or 4 country in the world in terms of market size. So that's actually quite an accomplishment given the size of the country. It's not one of the biggest countries in the world. However, it's managed to build this huge digital industry with such a small population. But about 6 or 7 years ago, what happened was that a couple of cryptocurrency exchanges popped up here in Korea. One of them being Bitdom, and Bitdom became associated with the entire, kind of boom back in 2017 when Bitcoin kind of hit $10,000, and Bitcoin really, built out the industry here. Now there's another exchange called Upbit, which kind of outgrew Bitdom and is a top 10 global cryptocurrency exchange, and another exchange called CoinOne. So really, the industry grew around, kind of cryptocurrency trading here in Korea, and these exchanges were not focused just on the domestic market; they were global. So you had people from all over the world trading on these exchanges. Now that from there grew the ICO boom of 2017 and 18. So this is where really crypto blockchain and all this got its start, with Ethereum and all of these projects coming online and really changing the dynamics of how finance and transactions could be done over the blockchain. More recently, what's come to market is the metaverse and NFTs. And now what this is really about is it's content, right? So it's user content done over Web3. What does that mean? So like James had alluded to before, this stuff is not really new, but what makes it new is the fact that you can monetize this. So individuals now have the power to monetize their own content over the blockchain. So this is revolutionary. You don't have to work with payment processors. You don't have to wait to get paid. Literally, if you want to pay someone, if I want to send James some money, he'll have it in a few seconds in Canada, and you don't have to go through a bank anymore. So this really leads into what, kind of the tie-in between cryptocurrency and now metaverse and gaming. It's something called decentralized finance. So what does that actually mean? Decentralized finance. So if you think about Bitcoin, what did Bitcoin bring to the world? It brought the world a decentralized network, and that's called the blockchain, right? So through this blockchain, you can now, you don't have to go through a bank or any intermediary to conduct transactions. But what came after that was Ethereum. So there was Bitcoin that built the network. Ethereum built its own network, but what Ethereum contributed were smart contracts. That was the ability to program some code into a transaction. So you could do more than just send money back and forth. Now you could give these transactions instructions. So what this enables is decentralized finance. So now you can conduct transactions over the blockchain with certain conditions on it. That led to the ICO boom, and now that's leading to the DeFi boom, or the decentralized finance boom. So what does that mean, or where are the opportunities for Canadians doing businesses in Korea? You could look at Naver's Zepeto. Naver's Zepeto has 200 million content creators on its platform. It's got 300 million users globally. There are only 50 million people in Korea, but this service has 300 million users globally. It's 4 years old. It's relatively still unknown to a lot of people that aren't really into the virtual worlds, but you've got big brand names like Gucci, Christian Dior, JYP, YG, Ralph Lauren selling digital goods in this universe. So they've had 2.3 million transactions already within this metaverse. Like, this is an enormous opportunity. It's still relatively unknown, but if you're creating content, you're creating games, you're creating items, anything, avatar characters, this is a company that you want to reach out to, a platform you want to take a look at based here in Korea. For people, yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask you though. So, when I read the announcement about the $187 million metaverse initiative, and I also read about NFTs and those sorts of things not actually being permitted in Korea. My question is it a digital twin, or is it genuinely an interoperable metaverse I mean,
Yeah.
you read the announcement. Is there the components of the Web3 side of things which make the metaverse, not simply a digital twin or a digital game, right? You know,
Yeah,
so
no,
I would just like to ask you that, because I understand, you know, all of the blockchain advantages and things like that, but I don't see a lot of blockchain and citizen engagement decentralization in what's going on, rather than it being a digital twin that's kind of like a visual representation of being able to save sort of, you know, going to the admin office or going, you know, do you know what I mean? That's not the same thing as metaverse necessarily.
Yeah,
right?
no, so hopefully it does get to that. It's still kind of early on, so hopefully they do. I think the key thing, and you've already touched on it in your presentation, is that you need to have cryptocurrencies or NFTs or, you know, blockchain integrated into the metaverse for it to be called a metaverse. Otherwise, it is a twin city. It is a virtual world.
Yeah, just a digital twin. Yeah,
exactly. So but hopefully, you know, I'm confident that, you know, the Seoul City Metropolitan Government will come up with a plan to include, you know, blockchain and decentralized finance, so that really when users are interacting with this metaverse of the future, that they'll be able to monetize and tokenize it, right? So I think that's a very important element, and you're right, like that needs to be included for it to be a metaverse.
right.
Like,
Because I think the other component there, you know, as we're looking at the second topic of today's conversation, it's where are the opportunities for international cooperation?
Yeah.
And I think if those elements of decentralization, blockchain are introduced, then, you know, theoretically and, you know, technically speaking, in some ways it should already engender the cooperation that we need, because, you know, that would then be a platform in which, you know, Canadian developers or developers from around the world, you know, should be able to participate in user-generated content initiatives and actually contribute to the development of, you know, digital soul, as it were, right? And with built-in forms of remuneration and the ability to get paid for doing that work, right? I suppose in the same way that a foreign corporation could come in and take, you know, a presence in one of the large shopping malls or in a physical real-world environment. You know, there's a lot of examples of overseas players starting to come in, or having been in Seoul for many years, right? But right now, with the absence of those blockchain components, or I mean, maybe I'm wrong in that. Maybe there is a blockchain component, and what I'm saying is it's not true. But, you know, how do you see? I suppose in a way, it's the old school fashion of sort of figuring out which foreign entities build nice models, and maybe we're able to put those models into digital soul. I'm not sure, but I'd love to know your thoughts on practically speaking over the next year. Assuming that there isn't the blockchain component, where are the opportunities for international cooperation for, you know, environment developers like us, for example, or even regular companies, regular foreign companies that would like to have a presence in digital soul?
great question. So I think, James, you're familiar with, I mean, James and I have worked together for 5 years now.
Yeah,
James
full
has
disclosure.
large delegations, gaming companies, AR, VR companies, like 10, 15 companies at a time over to Korea. You know, I think James did a lot of work for the province in terms of building out the IT sector and creating opportunities, you know, between Korean companies, large game publishers in Korea. And I think the opportunities today are really with, and I'm going to give you some names, the Upbit exchange, or Dunamu, which is one of the largest crypto exchanges in Korea. But they recently announced that that they'll be making a lot of investments into NFTs and the metaverse. They've launched an NFT marketplace, or they're launching an NFT marketplace in the US with Hybe Entertainment. Hybe Entertainment is a management company for BTS. So they're getting into that space in a very, very big way. You know, Upbit Exchange, it trades $3.2 billion US a day on their exchange. It's just phenomenal, this thing. It's massive. But they're investing into a lot of metaverse companies, NFT companies. So if you're in that space in BC, you should reach out to Dunamu and see if there's anything that, if you could raise money or partner with some of their portfolio companies. There's Hashed Capital, which is one of the early crypto funds set up here in Korea in 2017. They've got an AUM of about $4 billion. They grew that from 700,000 back in 2017. They're one of the big backers for Sandbox, which is one of the big metaverse names, Terra, the Terra protocol, and Ethereum. But they've invested in probably 100 different crypto startups. And there's a Terra protocol, which is a blockchain. It's a payment company and a DeFi protocol. And Terra is probably one of the hottest projects in blockchain and crypto right now. Their thing is really focused on decentralized finance, but they're investing into metaverse and play to earn gaming right now. So I think those are some of the big names in Korea. I think those are where some of the opportunities are today. But again, I think I'm confident that the Korean government, like they have done in the past, will help to support the industry, and they've identified metaverse as an important growth engine. So I think that's very, very good news.
Right. So you think that there is opportunity for foreign developers, digital developers, to come in and actually help build?
Definitely. I think this is a very interesting opportunity because crypto has created so much wealth for these venture funds and for these companies that from day one, when metaverse has become popular, there's so much capital, and there's so much capital behind this industry that I think small content creators, small game developers in the province or across Canada has access to a lot of opportunities here in Korea.
So when you read the announcement, is it the case then that it's a genuine digital twin? Or let's say, for example, there was a Canadian organization that had created, for example, a chain of metaverse only, live performance halls or, theater or any type of, a metaverse only store.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's an opportunity for us to now sort of look at expanding that business into Korea only in digital space, right? So it isn't a digital twin. Do you know if there's going to be a section of Digital Soul which is purely digital to allow us to move our businesses into Digital Soul without needing to build the real world version first? Or the news was a little bit scant, right?
I know. I'm hopeful that it does develop into something more meaningful, but I think the government will still have to join hands with some of the private sector companies like KOTRA, Hashed, and really join hands with these private sector companies in order to build this into something meaningful.
Okay. I'm just going to check if there's any questions from the audience in here. It seems to be more commentary about the difference between digital twin and true metaverse iterations, and also sort of support for more citizen engagement using DAO, similar to what Miami's doing, which I think is really probably the most progressive example.
I think someone asked for some of the names of the platforms that I referred to, but I think I can provide that. Yeah, I'll provide that to I guess the organizers, or I'll type that in here.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't you do that? So anyway, I think we've only sort of probably got 30 to 60 seconds left. Obviously, this is a major topic, and it's very exciting to see government beginning to engage with metaverse and the advantages that it can bring. Like I said, I still think there are components around the blockchain and decentralized finance and tokenization that are possibly missing from that announcement for it to be a real genuine, I think it's on the way, but I'm not necessarily sure it is fully metaverse at this stage yet. But obviously the promise of some of those components of digital twinning is right there. And I guess it just left to me to say thanks everybody for attending. Obviously this is a topic that really demands more than 20 minutes, but thank you. And I'd also like to thank Luke and just say that I'm looking forward to getting back over to Seoul so we can finish that bottle of whiskey that
I'm waiting for you, James.
Where did we leave that bottle? I can't remember. There's definitely a bottle which is half empty in was it that hotel in Yongda? Anyway, that's the real world, and you obviously can't do that in the metaverse. So the advantage of real life is a half-finished bottle of whiskey somewhere in Seoul. But anyway, I'm looking forward to the next time. So thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, James.
Thank you, James and Luke. They definitely just touched on the topic. So much information there to digest. Thank you so much. Now, next up is a conversation between two of the senior principals at the global design firm Populous. Populous is a global design and event powerhouse, famous for drawing people together at in-person experiences that enrich our lives. And now they're applying their vast experience to the digital world. They think in-person events and the metaverse can come together to form a single real-life and digital experience. So first, we have Brian Mirakian. He serves as the Director of Populous Brand Activation in the Americas. Through a core focus on connective strategy in the entertainment and hospitality industries, he masterfully creates opportunities for engagement by linking people to immersive user experiences on all levels, design mediums, and interactive technologies. Joining him is Michael Lockwood from the San Francisco office. He's nearly 2 decades into a career designing buildings and places that draw people together. He has an innate ability to listen to and interpret a variety of voices in the room, leading to design thinking that provides solutions to challenges create places that perform, inspire, and leave a legacy. So joining us now are Brian Mirakian and Michael Lockwood from Populous, and I'm going to stick around to help facilitate the conversation. Thank you both of you so much for being here today and letting me jump in on this. Now, you both bring people together, and as you're working together, you're combining data innovation while acknowledging and catering to people's needs. So for each of your visions, can you tell us what your vision is for the metaverse?
Michael, you want to start or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Zara. And it was awesome to hear both of our presenters really set the table. It is a really exciting time. And, I think that, as we kind of look at, this period of mass disruption over the course of the last couple of years, what we have found and what we always find in history is that following, events like a pandemic or, any other sort of moment in history, that it's always followed by really accelerated change in technology and design and science. And so we are entering into a really, I think, exciting period for many reasons. And one of the things that I lead at Populous is our esports and gaming division, digital entertainment. And one of the things that we saw, during this period of time over the course of the last few years is that while traditionally, Populous has been about bringing people together for physical experiences in our buildings, whether those are stadiums or arenas or convention centers, when the world, stopped spinning and everyone went indoors, one of the places that they found refuge and entertainment and ways to socialize was through gaming. And that was something that we took a keen interest around as we watched the way that people socially gathered in games like, Fortnite, for instance, and the ways that entertainers found ways to reach audiences through new mediums. And certainly, many of you that kind of watched pop culture unfold saw, entertainment acts like Travis Scott and others, holding, concerts inside, games where people were socially gathering and coming together. And that was really, I think, interesting moments as we observed what was happening. And as we continue to evolve, certainly things are advancing at a really, really rapid pace now. And for a design firm like Populous, we have very advanced tools that we use as we design buildings and plan our parts of cities where buildings reside. We use very sophisticated technologies from a 3D modeling standpoint, where when you apply light and material, you have a very, very close replica of the built reality. And it's unlocked a lot of really strong possibilities in terms of being able to bring audiences together well before a building is even constructed. So I think, as designers, myself, Michael, as we look at the possibilities now, there are many things that are unlocking related to reaching audiences in new and dynamic ways. And for us at Populous, our tagline has always been bringing people together. And we look at, not only bringing people together through great transformative buildings, places that have impacts on cities, great events, but now looking at the digital medium in terms of the metaverse and these virtual experiences in new ways. And for us, that's truly, exciting as we imagine the possibilities.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Zara. Yeah, I'll just add on to that a bit. I really appreciate the conversation here, and James and Luke, that was fascinating to learn about the technologies that you spoke about. As Brian mentioned, we design buildings and facilities in cities and districts and places where people physically come together. And it's really been fun to have this conversation these last few weeks leading up to this conversation about, what is it like to design for mass amounts of people? And the numbers that are thrown out, we as humans almost can't wrap our head around them. So if there's an audience of 300 million people, that's never been done before in human history, right? That number of people have never gathered in a single place and time, but they can instantly in the metaverse. So I think what we've been fascinated by is transferring all the skills that Brian talked about, understanding how people move through cities, how people enter and exit buildings, how they consume entertainment, sports, conferences, learning, there's so much about that that is transferable, but at the same time in the metaverse, the possibilities are limitless. So as a designer, we get extremely excited about the possibilities of the metaverse because there are so, I would say, fewer physical rules, and you introduce into the conversation metaphysical rules, which are super fun, right? So space and time, how many people do you want to be with at any given time? You know, at a flip of a switch, you could be with one person or a billion people instantly. And so that for us is fascinating on how we might design space and time for folks to experience the same types of feelings and emotions that we experience in real life. And I think there will be new emotions that we can design and cater toward in the metaverse. So we're just at the beginning of this phase. For me personally, I work on conferences and convention centers, entertainment districts. And so the pandemic for me was, you know, instantly everybody stopped going to conventions and started joining online conferences like this. And the information was still able to be exchanged. So there's plenty of back and forth, plenty of conversations. But I think what we missed was the magic of people being together in person. So one thing I'm looking forward to in the metaverse is how can we as designers recreate that magic, recreate the serendipity that we experience at being at a conference or being at a bar or being at a sporting event where you bump into somebody and you have an amazing experience together and you create memories together. That's what we're looking forward to in the metaverse.
Okay, so that leads to my next question was, you know, especially because Michael, you do come from live events more so, and Brian, you've worked with esports in your background. How do you use your design and data to complement real life and get those emotions for this new stage that looks like it's really the next stage for the next generation?
Yeah, I think for me, for connectivity, I'll jump in first here that, you know, as designers, so much of our task is communication. Having people connect and understand with content and visualize and see what we see. I love the idea of the metaverse because now I think it brings people to a current platform where we can all share and see the same thing together. You know, you think about how much of life is spent, you know, hoping somebody sees something the way you do or trying to see something the way somebody else does. You can create common ground together. And I think the digital environment offers that in a tremendous way, where we struggle with it a lot just in real life as designers trying to get owners and partners to understand, hey, I want to go this way. I want to take the design, you know, this direction. And I think the communication aspect of what we do is really fascinating and an opportunity to expand in the metaverse.
Yeah, and I would just add on to that. I think that, you know, one of the things that we see as a tremendous opportunity with the metaverse is the way that we're unlocking, you know, these experiences to audiences and you know, new audiences. And Michael kind of touched on that a bit as well. But, you know, what has happened, you know, traditionally in history is that we have these great sort of localized experiences that if you're fortunate enough to be there in person, then you've experienced something really amazing. And there's something incredible, right, about going to watch a baseball game, for instance, at Yankee Stadium, right, or going to your favorite, you know, arena in Canada and watching, you know, Stanley Cup Finals, right? But what happens is it's a very finite experience for a very small amount of people, right? Maybe 17, 18,000 people, or in the case of a baseball, you know, game, maybe 30,000 people. But what happens when that kid in Shanghai, you know, or Seoul, Korea, right, that his dream is to be in that moment and experience that moment? What happens when you can transform or transport that experience, right, to that individual, and allow that experience to be unlocked to, you know, hundreds of thousands and a million more people in some cases? I think there's a really amazing power in terms of how do you extend that experience to that broader audience, and doing that through a metaverse platform, and doing that through, you know, a simulated experience that can be built, and quite frankly is really pretty powerful. Even today, imagining what it's going to be like in, you know, 5, 10, 15 years and beyond, as the technology advances and creates, you know, more atmospheres and more environments that simulate what a real-time experience is like in that place. That's really incredible. And it's also really incredible from a monetization standpoint, in terms of these brands being able to extend to that audience that today is really candidly in a very finite place where it can only be experienced by a very small amount of people. You have television broadcasts, you have all sorts of things related to streaming content that can be broadcast around the world. But when you can transport that experience through metaverse type of environment, it really is a pretty powerful tool that we're just now beginning to harness. And I think that, as a designer, and especially as a designer at a place like Populous, where Michael and I reside, every day we're imagining possibilities, but our work has really been about, creating the types of design solutions that ultimately get applied to real building construction. That's going to continue. But the question is really ultimately, how do we take those same tools and the same methodology that we're designing buildings around and apply that into a realm that's easily accessible well in advance, again, of the building being constructed, and unlocking those experiences to those audiences, many years, candidly, prior to a building ever coming to life, or in some cases, a building ever being designed that's going to be physically constructed. We absolutely believe that there's a time in the near-term future when a client is going to come to us simply to design a building that will reside in a virtual environment. And that's going to unlock, again, many new possibilities for us as a design practice. But those are the sort of questions, hypotheticals that we're challenging ourselves with at the moment.
Amazing. And the way you talk about transporting, kind of like you're there. So a lot of people don't understand what the metaverse is, and experiencing, Fortnite, like you say, it's very popular, but a lot of people, we haven't done that. So you have an experience with esports and stadiums in that realm. Can you tell us more about that, Brian, and what it's like to be in that online stadium and some of the stadiums you've worked on?
Well, yeah, thank you for that question. I think that, for us, esports and digital entertainment was something that we began to look at really keenly, 7-8 years ago. We saw a wave of entertainment that was coming on the horizon. We were looking at, South Korea and the amazing proliferation of esports events in large venues, candidly, in a place like South Korea, and looking at what was going to, in our opinion, happen very, very soon in North America. We started to imagine, how we were going to apply principles of real, stadium arena design into a virtual environment. And we went through a process of very in-depth research and development, a lot of future thinking, and a lot of application of what we believed was possible. And from that, we began to, design and construct real projects, which has been very exciting to see. But I think what's real and really fascinating, I guess, about esports events is that people gather for esports events for the same reason that they gather for traditional sports events, because they love to be together. And that's the thing that we know is absolutely inherent, is that it's wired in our DNA that we want to be together. We want to be together for those shared experiences, those magic moments. And I was struck a couple weeks ago watching it was a Counter-Strike event that was held in Arlington, Texas, at actually one of the venues that we designed at the Esports Stadium Arlington. And there were 3,000 fans that gathered for that championship event, and they were cheering like it was absolutely, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup, and the crowd made a difference. And
so does that feel like you're in a crowd when you're in the metaverse? It feels like you're there. You can see the other people.
In that case, it was a real audience. It was a real audience. It was a live audience. But at the same time, we are designing venues now where we are going to allow a simulated event to occur, and people can enter basically into a virtual arena by an avatar and be in a space virtually. So it's really kind of two things, right? It's designing the physical venues, but then it's also designing a virtual replica that will allow many different forms of a virtual audience to gather for those events as well. So we're thinking at it kind of on both levels. But it is exciting to see not only the live audiences gather, but also the venues that are being designed in a virtual world that will allow the same types of crowds to gather in that capacity as well.
It's really fascinating. And do you both feel that it's amplifying real life experiences or getting close to that?
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I think there are things you can experience in the metaverse that you can't in real life, and I think when you have experiences virtually, you come back into reality, and there are things that you might take a fresh look at and be re-energized to experience. I think, hopefully everybody on this call has experienced things through the pandemic that they lost the chance to do. And the first time you were in a crowded bar or a restaurant or a stadium or a conference, that feeling of being connected to humans in space is visceral. And I do think that's the potential of the metaverse, is how do we recreate that to make sure that people are feeling connected, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling like the value of connecting in the metaverse is there as a human. And then vice versa, as we're people in real space, understanding that we can connect digitally and virtually. Watching the chat screen over here is fantastic. We have people connecting dots around the world instantly, and I think that's the fantastic side of reality here, is that we can make very quick connections, gain information, make connections with people that we want to work with so seamlessly. And so there's a nice hybrid there of going back and forth, and I think we're all fairly comfortable with that. But there are the in-person moments that make you feel it in your soul. That is, again, why people come together and have for thousands and thousands of years. That's what we embrace as a brand, as a company, as Populous. We design these venues. And so we love the fact that people will always be drawn together. And as Brian said, for electronic events, they still want to be with their friends. They want to be with their colleagues. They want to experience it together, side by side. And before and after the event, they want to celebrate. So there's a very human side to that we love to appreciate as well.
Well, Michael, you're an urban planner. So your experience with the metaverse, how do you feel that has changed or transferred over to your real life complex stadium building?
For us, I keep coming back to this sense of time and place. So urban planning, the scale at which we work at in cities, it takes time to move between spaces, whether it's from your home to a stadium, from a hotel room to a convention, or a restaurant to a bar. Humans understand space and time by moving through cities. And I think in the metaverse, I'll be very curious as these worlds are built. And you can already see it in some of the gaming examples that Luke and the previous group talked about. James, these worlds are designed with space and time in mind. In Fortnite, you must get to places to do something else. And if you think about it, virtually, there's not really a need for that. You could instantly be wherever you want to be, experiencing whatever you want to experience. But I think there's this innate sense for humans to understand anticipation and time and distance and moving somewhere to experience something else. So as architects and designers, I think for Brian and I and all of Populous, we're fascinated with how the virtual space will take shape based on how people are used to experiencing cities in real life, and then how that effect might come back and make for smarter cities, make for better transportation techniques or movement through cities. I think that the back and forth will be fascinating.
Great. And now, before we run out of time, I really want to know what new innovative projects you're working on together, and if you can show us some examples.
So Zara, one of the things I wanted to share out. Michael and I are constantly looking at future ways that we can apply some of these new technologies. One of the things that we've been doing at the moment is actually working with a esports organization around developing an arena so that their fans can gather and watch events together. So if I could, I would like to share out really quickly a little bit of a glimpse into a project that we're developing at the moment. So this is an example of a virtual arena, and let's see if I can just get this thing to share. Okay, so this is kind of an entry sequence. Now we're going to be launching this initially as an NFT collection for their fans to purchase, essentially a number of pieces of artwork. But this is the first piece that we're developing. And as we develop the arena itself, we're going to allow them to introduce a ticketing platform and ultimately the ability to then enter into the venue. So this is kind of a bit of an approach into the facility. We're building out kind of a virtual environment that it will reside in. And then this is an example shown in the next image, the arena. So this is showing the arena where the event will take place. Each of these seats will be ticketed. Everything from boxes to kind of premium products, the seats themselves. The fans will be able to virtually gather and then watch the event in the space. So we see this as a pretty exciting application, again, that can ultimately translate into a number of different types of applications, whether it's an esports arena, whether it's a gathering space, for instance, in a convention center. Ultimately, we're doing a lot of evaluation about how this translates into a real-time digital twin type of environment. So you can watch an English Premier League, match in one of the buildings we've already constructed, for instance, like, Tottenham Stadium, or some of our other, NFL stadiums that we've designed. There's a lot of conversation right now around, again, how do you create these virtual environments that are replicas, right, and bring fans together. But this is an example of an esports arena that we're developing, and this is a little bit of a sneak peek. We're releasing this in the next month, but I think it's just an exciting sort of early example of where things are headed.
Okay, great. Thank you both so much, Michael and Brian. Amazing discussion. We're just getting to the top level of it, and I'm sorry we've run out of time. There's much more to look forward to. I can't wait to see your project be unveiled. Thanks again to Brian and Michael.
Thank you.
Now let's shift gears and get back to the poll questions. And it looks like nearly half of you chose the first option, increasing accessibility to events, services, and other social experiences for the last poll question. And we do have another one. It'll pop up on your screen and you'll have your choices to choose from. There is our final question. What are the biggest challenges for cities navigating their role in the metaverse? Now that you know a lot more about the metaverse, please choose the answer you think fits best, and we will release the poll results later on. Now to our panel. Please welcome our speakers that are talking about building collective experiences in the metaverse. First, we have Ryan Kiefer, Chief Metaverse Officer for TerraZero Technologies. He's the co-founder of Bear NFT, a metaverse marketing agency. He's also the co-founder of Confidential Creative, an animation studio and creative agency with an established portfolio of music videos and animation projects for the likes of Maroon 5, Journey, Carrie Underwood, Peacock Kids, and many more artists. Next, we also have a co-founder and CEO of Superworld, Rish Lotlikar. He previously co-founded Rogue Initiative Studios, a Hollywood film, TV, gaming, and immersive entertainment studio. He was also the founding managing partner of East Labs, an early-stage VC fund based in Kiev, Ukraine. Our final panelist is Ida Kumer. Ida is the Strategic Business Development Manager at Journey, the Metaverse company. And they have been delivering immersive metaverse experiences since early 2020 that enable real human connection. Ida spends every day creating what Web3, the metaverse, and NFTs will be like. And I want to thank Ida for being here when it's well past 3 a.m. where she is. And our panel monitor, thank you for being here, Dan Bergar, co-founder and CEO of Frontier Collective. Dan is a true pioneer and influencer in the technology space within the metaverse industry. His mission has been to advance immersive technology as a productive tool that will change the world. Dan, please take it away.
Thank you so much. Really excited to be here. I'm actually a second-generation Korean, and I've never been to Korea, so I really love the confluence that's happening here. I guess I would call me a Kyopo. Really excited to be here in this panel today. We have an all-star lineup, and really excited to kind of dive into the metaverse and where we're at. Today, just announced through Bored Apes, one of their co-founders just raised a $450 million raise for an NFT metaverse. That's literally happened a couple hours ago, and we're seeing incredible, kind of innovations within this sector, and really kind of looking at, how do we connect people to the virtual world, and how do we connect with the community in the real world? Folks like Harish are really kind of looking at how do we, really connect, some of the, meaningful experiences that we have within the world. So I wanted to kind of tee it up to Harish and start us off. what is your kind of definition of the metaverse? I know we've had a few panels on it, but I would love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, again, thanks again for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Excited to have this discussion. I think the metaverse, again, is defined in a lot of different ways, but for me, it is a interface that combines your online and offline, your virtual and your real life. It is a combination of all virtual worlds. It's kind of the next evolution of the internet.
Yeah, that's a great definition, Ryan. What do you think the purpose and functionality within the metaverse moving forward, especially within the next couple of years here?
Yeah, one of the things that we've been seeing is I guess more and more aspects of our everyday life are moving into the metaverse. The only thing that I think I do agree with one of the previous speakers said, you can't get drunk in the metaverse, at least not yet. We did a build for Miller Lite for the big game, Super Bowl. Getting into Decentraland back in February. We did have digital beer. I know Heineken also just did a thing with some digital beer. So it's just been really exciting to see more and more of our everyday life being moved into the metaverse. And I'm sure one day they'll figure out how to get us drunk in the metaverse too.
And Ida, do you think people will just want to stay in the metaverse eventually and just live their lives there instead of the real world?
I really don't think so. I think it's all about creating experiences that sort of inspires us to come back out and do really cool things in the real world, like having drinks with real people.
I love that. Harish, can you kind of untap that a little bit with the work that you're doing with Superworld and some of the 3D metaverse IRL applications that you're building?
Yeah, no, and thanks for saying that, Ida, and also Ryan, about how I at Superworld, we wholeheartedly agree as part of our mission is Superworld is focused on the real world, on your real life, empowering people in their real life to leverage these technologies to enhance their real life. And so, for us, that means, if you're going to an event in the real world, you can, again, see content, maybe in augmented reality that's enhancing your real life. You can, maybe prior to the event, buy an NFT that gets you access to that event and, again, gives you that authenticity or, some kind of transferability of that NFT because of utilization of the blockchain and Web3 technology. Or, again, you're doing something in the real world, like going to that event, and you're able to do something virtually after the event, like, receive an accessory or a proof of participation or something for being there. So again, I think for us, it's all about how do you focus on the real world and then bring all these technologies again together to make an impact positively on the world as well, which is part of our mission at Superworld.
That's incredible. Ryan, can you kind of dive into some of the opportunities and barriers that we're talking about within the metaverse?
Yeah, so opportunity is kind of endless at this point. It's so new. You can kind of do whatever you want and kind of stake your flag and what you want to be doing. It's like, for instance, Terra Zero, we're focusing on being able to build out really cool experiences, land rental, utilization, advertising, things like that. We really don't believe in the speculation of metaverse land, which I know a lot of people are kind of doing right now, although people may view it speculative anyway. But we really think about building on these opportunities to bring more people into the metaverse. And some of the issues right now, people are starting to learn more about MetaMask and all these different wallet types and that's like the first little bridge I think that people are starting to break through. Luckily, like, I'm starting to explain, and my grandma's been on Decentraland now, so if she's starting to understand these things, I think other people can start to understand these things as well. So it's really just starting to get these little basic things that might sound scary, but it's like, hey, MetaMask is really just a plug into your browser. It's not that complicated. You've done it a million times with yours for Zoom or whatever. It's the same thing. And then, just telling people the basic safety rules about making sure that they're doing okay. But I think once those roadblocks are unblocked, it's pretty easy to access a lot of these different metaverses experiences.
Ida, you're doing some incredible work with building your own metaverse. And how do you feel kind of about the interoperability question that seems to be coming up in almost every metaverse conversation? Do you feel that's important, and how do we move forward into interconnected 3D worlds?
That is a very good question, especially because with Journey, we build different metaverses, so white label to different brands. And then the interoperability becomes really crucial to how we're going to move forward, right? So for us, it's really, if you, for example, have something in Decentraland, you should be able to bring your users across to maybe a peak experience or a specific showroom or whatever that could be in a Journey-powered experience, and then bring it back. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So for me, it's really a crucial point that we need to look at, and we are actively developing.
Rish, can you build on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think a big part of how we see the thesis in terms of the metaverse is an open metaverse. And again, creating, whether it's content that is created in Superworld as an example, and have that content be able to be shared externally to other platforms, other virtual worlds, utilization of NFTs that again can be traded and sold and bought in Superworld or other metaverses. What we've seen in terms of our user behavior at Superworld specifically that I think relates to this question is a lot of people out there, as you all know, are confused about what the metaverse is. How do you utilize technologies like Web3 or DeFi or AR, VR, and AI? And so what we're providing is a way for them to get in, but at the same time, get into these other places. So whether it is DeFi, whether it is going into another virtual world, whether it is, buying more crypto from an exchange, and then doing all those things again in the real world. And so that really takes that interoperability. It takes, kind of focusing on where your customers are already, whether they are on centralized platforms like Facebook or Instagram, or they're in Sandbox or Decentraland. And we're very close to all of these other, companies out there, Niantic, Google, Apple. We're built on all of them. And that's kind of how we have that interoperability.
I'm seeing a ton of institutions really clamoring to get into the metaverse. We've heard of KPMG Canada moving into the metaverse, HSBC and JP Morgan just recently. And this is great, just to see some of the institutional organizations get into the metaverse. But how important is it that brands don't own the metaverse, or like Facebook, for example? It was such a big hype train that came in at the tail end of last year, and it was great for our industry. 10 years working in this industry and seeing Facebook really double down on this technology and putting almost everything into building kind of the bones and the structure of it. But how important is it that Facebook or Google or Amazon really don't own this next wave of the internet? I'll tee it off to Ryan.
Okay, just want to make sure I didn't cut anybody off. That's kind of the big thing between picking which metaverse you want to be in is, do you want to be in a decentralized one or do you want to be in a centralized one? For me, we like and dabble mostly in decentralized ones, or with ones that are looking to have DAOs be in place or things like that to make it more decentralized than what it can be. Obviously, right now, people need to be building the infrastructure, so there's going to be some centralization in that factor. But when it comes down to it, I think a lot of people, especially younger generation, who've now seen what happens when people can harvest your data for your entire life, what happens, and no one really enjoys that. So we're trying to, I think, by picking which company you want to be part of or not a company and the decentralized entity, you're really going to be picking how you want to kind of have your digital identity as going forward for the rest of your life, potentially. That's one of the things that I think people need to start really looking at is, what's my data, what's happening with it, and how do I protect myself going forward? And that can be based on what metaverse you want to be on.
Ida, what are your thoughts?
Just digesting a little bit. That was a really interesting comment. I feel that it's really important that institutions such as European Union or cities like Seoul government, etc., get involved, because there is another layer to it than just marketing, right? And I think that is the point of collective experience, in making things accessible and really democratizing them in a way. And if we don't have the society involved in that way, then it will just be another marketing platform, right?
Yeah, that's a great point, and kind of taps on my next question within government. Is there a meaningful role that government can play, especially, you know, that we're kind of in this third inning of where this technology is going? We haven't even hit the precipice of where this will end up. You know, we're still at that moment where we're waiting for the Apple glasses to come out. You know, that's supposed to come out in the next 2 years. We've all been waiting for it to be able to interact with, you know, the world around us, you know, through IRL experiences. And I think, Rish, you're really set up nicely for that. But how important is it that governments really start doubling down and investing into some of the builders and entrepreneurs and startups that are kind of building the foundation of what the metaverse could be, and how crucial is it for them to really kind of, you know, put this top of mind in terms of you know, growth and innovation as this becomes kind of this you know, this new kind of transformational revolution that's happening among us. Krish, you want to kind of uncork that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. You know, I think on the macro level, you know, entrepreneurs, innovators across the world, you know, really need the ability to organize and again, have structures in place that give them, you know, the confidence that they can, you know, build companies. And so there is some, you know, I think a bit of a regulatory framework that needs to exist just on the innovation side, as we think about Web3 or, you know, other aspects of the metaverse that I think will come into play, you know, vis-a-vis data and other things. But I also think that, you know, governments really have an opportunity here to, you know, get in front of this technology and to leverage this technology in a very positive way. I just had breakfast last week with the mayor of Chicago. The week before, I met with the mayor of Miami, you know, very close with the government of Barbados that's building an embassy in Superworld already. So there are governments, as you know, like El Salvador, and, you know, the city of Miami has been very vocal about, you know, their support of crypto and Web3. So is Dubai and Korea, you know, again, very aptly on this call, and Canada. And so, you know, I think that there is a lot of energy and excitement around it, and that's great. And I think that governments really need to think about what the problems they have right now and how they're serving their citizens. And again, these technologies, especially Web3, especially immersive technologies, especially the data aspects of what Ryan was bringing up, you know, all of these things can be really leveraged properly. We have a term at Superworld called live to earn. And it's, you know, it's play to earn, but it's those same concepts, but it's taking that into the real world. How do you take, you know, tokenomics and bring those incentive structures into real world activities? How can you, you know, incentivize people to be active in their community? How do you incentivize people to maybe, you know, take action politically for things they believe in? How do you get communities together? And I think all of these things, and that's just the Web3 part of it, right? I think AR, VR, that could be education. I think you could bring, you know, again, rebuilding cities like was discussed earlier. You know, we're partnered with the United Nations and UNESCO to help rebuild cities like Beirut, Lebanon. So, you know, I think governments really can leverage these technologies in positive ways. So I'm very excited because they are doing it. And there are many governments that are showing that leadership. And so I'm very excited about that happening more and more in the metaverse.
Rish, we need to get you out to Vancouver to talk to some of the provincial government there.
Sure.
So, Ryan, you work in virtual real estate within the metaverse. I really love some of the work that you're doing. Can you kind of explain what's happening right now with this kind of rush into this gold rush of virtual real estate and virtual land? We're seeing folks like basically like Snoop Dogg, for example, buying land for millions and millions of dollars, and people wanting to be neighbors with Snoop Dogg, for example. Could you kind of dive into that a little bit, Ryan?
Yeah. So, people, like I said, or some people are speculating, some people are actually building. One of the things like we did as part of like one of the reasons we're trying to build the metaverse in ways is through mortgages. So we offered the first metaverse mortgage because we wanted to help start making entrepreneurs and giving people opportunities to build businesses in the metaverse. We do believe that there's a great opportunity, not only for, individuals who want to have a cool space to, show their things off or just have fun, hang out with their friends or other hangout spaces. Most of the people that I work with at Terra Zero are all over the world, or I'm also in Canada as well. And then a lot of my friends now through Decentraland, speaking with these people at the Sandbox, Somnium Place, all these different locations, where it's a very global community now. And we're going to start building these really cool, unique things, and we need places to hang out. So that's what this virtual real estate is really about in terms from an individual perspective, but from a brand and company perspective, it's really just a great opportunity to showcase your business, showcase experiences, bring people together, foster community. That's really what that's really what NFT projects are doing really well right now is fostering community. So I think it's a little bit taking a page out of that is really building brand identity and showing that, you're giving back to communities. And there's just so many ways to be activating now. And one of them is the metaverse. And that's why people are just rushing in. Some obviously, like I said, speculative, some of them to build. We definitely think most people now are coming in to build though. And we're really excited about that.
Ida, how important is it for us to not build physical or to build experiences and metaverses that we all hate in real life? I've seen some of the H&M experiences and some of the retail experiences that basically replicate a store, and it's lining up, it's trying to find certain items of clothing, and I think there's a lot of developers and designers that just aren't thinking in this, metaverse realm in terms of creating in 3D spaces. Can you kind of dive into how do we make sure that we have really engaging metaverse experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to do a correction that H&M one was fake. The real one is coming out soon, what I've heard. And yeah, but it is, if we go back to the topic sort of this panel with collective experience, if you really look at what that means, that is essentially an emotional connection with other people, right? And to feel that you're there in a space. And we all know how it feels like to sit in a boring conference room. We don't want to be there. We want to leave as soon as possible. So if we replicate that kind of environment, we're not going to want to be there. We're not going to come back to that kind of space. So to me, it's really about a journey. It's really about creating those emotional experiences, but doing so virtually, creating spaces that, you walk in and you just feel stunned right away. We have had people crying in our experience because it's beautiful or something like that. And I think that is the only way to truly inspire and to use metaverse experience for a deeper change, because as humans, as we all know, we need that element to really create change or connection to a brand, a topic, or other people.
That's a great answer, Ida. And I think we're almost at time. We have a few minutes left. So I just want to kind of end it off and let everyone kind of chime in with a short answer. Ryan, I'll start with you. What would you say to some of the naysayers of folks that are saying the metaverse is all hype, Web3 is a scam? Do you have an answer for that?
I guess the proof is in the people who keep showing up. There's a lot of really smart people. There's a lot of really great communities, and people thought the same thing about the internet. And so we saw what happened with that. So I think it's just continually, smart people are working really hard in these really awesome spaces and building really awesome technologies. People think that, like the guy was saying before, esports was stupid. Now it's getting watched by millions and millions of people. It's really just the evolution of what entertainment is and what generation you are in. I think that's a big factor of it, and what people deem to be entertaining is also as part of it, and what an actual human experience might be changing as a definition a little bit too, because you can be having these really in-depth human connections, even though it's in a digital space. And I think those things are some things that people just don't factor really into this, and because they're just not used to having that experience. So once people start to realize that you can have these things and you can have these really beautiful emotional connections, like Ida was saying, in these spaces, I think there's just going to be an even bigger boom and excitement for this. And we're just very, very early.
Rish?
Yeah, I think that the thing that I'm very excited about is the amount of innovation that's coming. This technology is moving so fast, and what we're seeing coming, on the horizon is so exciting. I mean, you brought up, the glasses that are likely coming out from Apple, but that's just the beginning. BCI, brain computer interface, and things that are even we think are way in the future are coming faster than we can imagine. And that really opens up a lot of opportunities for us to really again realize all the potential of all the things that we want to do as innovators here and as entrepreneurs. And I'm literally looking forward to working with all of you to kind of make all that happen, because I think we can work together and make it happen. Dan and I've known each other for a very long time. It's so exciting to see all of these things happen. And so that's what I'm most excited about. So, again, I welcome that. And anyone in the audience, if you're excited about these things, get in touch. I'd love to work with you guys. We're building this thing called Team Superworld, which is just everyone in the world coming together to build the world, that we dream of, our super world. So
thank
awesome.
you so much, Rish. And we have the information on our website, cityage.com, if you want to keep in touch and check everyone's bio out and eventually find this episode online also. Thank you once again to our panel, to our exciting conversation. Now let's review our previous poll results. We'll see that it was fairly spread apart on opinions with our last poll question. Definitely interesting points for the industry to consider. And we'll leave that there for you to look at briefly. And our last panel discussion is where we're headed at now. It's all about building Web3 clusters. Joining us is Jackie Kim Perez, digital design specialist at Covalent and the leader of one of the most successful ambassador programs in the blockchain space, now known as the Alchemist program. She is passionate about crypto communities, breaking barriers for underrepresented individuals who need access to education, tools, and mentorship. And we also have Annika Lewis, grants program lead for Gitcoin. They build and fund public digital goods, empowering communities of builders to connect and work together to build the future of the open web. Hosting our panel is one of CityAge's own, he's the co-founder, Mark Andrew. Mark, I'll leave it to you. Mark, are you there?
I'm here and I was on mute. So there we go. Thanks, Zara. I'm thrilled to step in for Amy, and Amy sends her apologies. She is on a plane that was delayed, but we did get to have a prep call with her, and so she passed along a lot of thoughts for this panel. And this has been a terrific discussion, so I want to thank, on behalf of CityAge and Miro and Alon and everyone else, all of our speakers for joining us today across 2 continents and further beyond. So this discussion really builds on a lot of what Rish was speaking to on the last one, when he got into some of the support from governments, and Dan was speaking to, and a lot of what Dan's trying to achieve, I think, with his collective here in Vancouver. which is how geographic clusters or physical places can build clusters of expertise that support the development of Web3. And the idea of a geographic cluster, of course, is not very metaverse oriented because it was always rooted in the old economy, if you could think of it that way, of a real place and people congregating in a real place. And so the metaverse, at least in promise, stipulates that the geography wouldn't matter as much. And so thrilled to have both Annika and Jackie here. And so I'll start with a question for both of you, which is, how much does, maybe I'll start with Annika first, because you've recently come back to Vancouver, I understand, from New York and chosen to come back home and experience the cluster here. And so how much does the physical city still matter? How much does in-person meeting of people still matter to build a lot of these products we're seeing emerge on the metaverse?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. Good to see everyone and excited to be here. I think it's a really interesting question around sort of the importance of kind of the digital versus the physical in this new age. And I think, with what I'm seeing and with Web3, we are really moving to a much more digital native world. I was telling these guys in the prep call the other day that, I'm in a position where I actually live and work, a significant chunk of my life online, and I'm meeting friends that are, people who I'm interacting with online and kind of really living a digital first life in many ways. That said, that is very much in contrast to when I first moved back to Vancouver before COVID, when I'd been living in New York City in kind of a very sort of physically co-located kind of tech hub, and moving back to Vancouver and kind of feeling just the difference of what being in sort of a smaller geography was like in that respect. So I think COVID really has changed everything and has really accelerated the move to more of a digital native world. And I think with Web3 and with kind of, the idea of the metaverse, people are definitely moving towards that sort of sentiment where we're meeting people more online. It's not weird to be on a call with someone who's many, many time zones away. And that is now more the rule rather than the exception. But I do think the the physical realm rather maintains a really important part of our lives and of community building. Here in Vancouver, we've got a phenomenal Web3 cluster that is emerging. There's certainly no sort of Silicon Valley of Web3, although Brooklyn and Los Angeles are definitely hubs, but definitely there is power in co-location and in building something kind of together in somewhere that's a little bit more co-located. So all that to say is that it's definitely nuanced. We're definitely moving to a different world, but there is certainly still power in the in-person and in synergies that can be brought by physical co-location.
And if you look at those places that are emerging, it seems that digital effects and gaming have certainly played a huge role in it. And our focus in this event has been on Seoul and Vancouver, or Canada and Korea. And those are two real hubs for the Web3 technologies or Web3 space and startups. And obviously, not coincidentally, digital gaming and digital effects. Jackie, did you have much to offer to that, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I have a lot to agree with what Annika said, but I do also want to add on that having the physical presence versus virtual presence is very important, because it really depends on what an individual is trying to get out of it for themselves, how they want to impact and educate the community and people around them. But I'm a huge fan of gaming. I've gotten to the point where I was really addicted when I was young, but it allowed me to go to a space where I could be myself, find a safe space because of the people that were around it. So I think that's the amazing opportunities that you have with a digital identity. But I feel like it's very important to keep grounded to your roots and to be genuine about it too. But it's crazy how creative this space can allow you to be. It reminds me of being a kid again and playing in a sandbox and allowing you just to thrive in that and not really having people say, no, you can't do this or you can't be that. So yeah, very excited to being able to shift to that with the digital identities and the metaverse too.
Well, and that's tied to this topic around geography is really the question of how the metaverse and Web3, they're not quite interchangeable, but how both have a promise of inclusivity and making the web more accessible for individuals all over the world. And so maybe Annika, can you explain that a bit further? What is it about Web3 that guarantees or offers a promise of more inclusivity to people?
Yeah, to me, something that's really, really important about kind of the promise of Web3 is sort of the idea of ownership and the ownership economy. And kind of breaking down and really sort of removing the divide between the haves and the have-nots. As you know, in previous worlds, we had people who had, equity ownership and kind of big ownership stakes in certain, whether it be companies or property or what that may be, and really benefited from capital appreciation as a result of holding those assets. If you're coming from a underprivileged socioeconomic situation, that ownership is not something that's typically easily accessible, because it requires capital to actually have outlays and get that. One of the promises of Web3 is sort of moving from Web 1, which was a read internet, where it was very much in the 90s, you were just strictly consuming, to Web 2, which was what we call kind of read-write, where, we've got social media and you can start to, kind of interplay with different websites and post content and have much more kind of back and forth synchronous dialogue. And Web 3, the idea is sort of read, write, own, whereby if you are actually using a specific protocol or project, you would actually perhaps be granted some ownership, and users, the everyday individual, would be granted ownership and accessibility as a result of their involvement, as opposed to simply, just being kind of a user and being, used for their data. And so to me, that's all, we're already seeing that start to play out with things like airdrops in Web3, where early users of specific protocols are getting ownership. And to me, just that idea is really powerful in terms of accessibility. So that's one piece that I'm really excited about of many.
Sorry, I got on mute because I've got a child playing in the background. But Jackie, you spoke a bit about diving into gaming and so forth too. And further, I'd love to hear your answer to the question I just asked as well. But how technically sophisticated do you have to be to get into Web3? So there's different forms of inclusivity, right? I mean, do you have to attend a university or college on this, or can someone self-train in any location in the world?
I think that's the beautiful thing about Web3 is you actually don't have to know how to code or be an engineer to get involved in different ways. I mean, you've been seeing creatives get involved, people who don't really have degrees get involved. And I can take our program as a perfect example, and including our hackathons that we run at Covalent, because we provide a no-code solution, we allow people to come in not even having experience, build something pretty cool, and at the same time understanding the importance of data. But with the program that we built, it was really based on learning and development, and it was really dependent on what an individual wanted to do for themselves and their families and their communities. And it didn't matter at what level they were in, if they had degrees or not. It really created that safe space and really built inclusivity where they could be themselves, learn at their own pace, and then develop different skill sets and also share their knowledge. So that was pretty awesome to see. And then the best leaders that we actually had come out of the program were people who came from underrepresented countries that were suppressed, or even third world countries, because of just that energy and hustle that they had in wanting to learn and access a lot of things where they have many barriers. So that's the one thing that I love and am passionate about Web3 that you don't really see in the traditional sense. But yeah, that's like a huge thing where you can have a lot of impact in.
So can we dive a bit more into that, and really specifically, so one of the often held examples is that creators, as you've mentioned, let's say a musician, can go straight into their audience and monetize their audience more effectively than having to go through a label. So that would be an example of how it could improve monetization for artists. Is that specifically accurate? How does, if you're a young musician or any age musician, let's say, and you want to build an audience on the metaverse or on Web3, how do these technologies help them create more revenue? How does it unleash more opportunity for creators?
I think it makes it a lot easier for especially young creatives who are new to connect with people and removing that barrier from it. So I come from a background where I'm a digital artist too, and I started to try and do a lot of my work on Instagram, but was really hard to break through a lot of the barriers or through a lot of the noise or the algorithms. So jumping into Web3 and the NFT space really allowed me to connect with other talented artists who really believed in the same mission of driving things to benefit basically like the art, the community, and all of the heart that goes into it. And those connections, they were allowing me to connect with like other people that they knew. So I think there's a big power to networking that we've been seeing, especially connecting with people virtually, that is great in this space for young creatives. And it doesn't really allow you to be held back by third parties or even other people who tell you how you should moderate your stuff or how you should create art, how you should distribute it, how you should interact with people. You can really be yourself.
Yeah, and just to add to that on kind of the musician example, because I think that's a really interesting one. My sort of pragmatic answer there is like, today, that's probably not super viable, just given the Web3 tools that we have and the platforms that exist in a big way. Like, there is no winning Web3 Spotify yet, for example. But you could imagine, there's many of these platforms in development. And when they end up coming to fruition and, Ethereum and other blockchains are scalable enough that you can actually, kind of use smart contracts at scale to enable this type of thing. The big power of Web3 here is that it enables these things to be done in a trustless, permissionless manner. And so you don't need to trust an intermediary necessarily like a Spotify or a Facebook or because these contracts can be executed, without a human in the loop or without an intermediary. That's to me where a lot of the power comes in for these types of creator economy enablement tools in the future, where from day one, you can have, royalties programmed into your song that you post. And every time that song gets shared, just automatically without any intermediary, you will have those types of revenues kind of generating back to you. So to me, it's all about kind of the smart contracts and the tech that enables it. But practically speaking, for most your average artist today, we're not there in terms of having tools that are actually able to do that at scale.
And are we seeing some of the big companies in these spaces come in and start building partnerships, with some of the startup companies? Annika, you've got a background in venture capital. Have you seen any of that happening?
Yeah, certainly. All sorts of big companies, from sort of your mid-sized companies to your Fortune 500s are coming in, trying to play in the metaverse and in Web3 in various ways. I know GameStop announced in their earnings report last week that they want to set up an NFT marketplace, and I believe they're looking to partner with someone to do that. There's certainly all sorts of different organizations that are more Web2 native and want to dip their toes in the water in Web3, and partnering with an organization that is more established in Web3, but is often smaller, given the nascency of the industry, can be useful. I'm trying to think offhand of any like really successful partnerships that I've seen between sort of those bigger, well-known companies and sort of Web3 startups. And I'm drawing a blank because I think most of it really, like, for most of the Web3 startups, they really want to be kind of building that future from the ground up themselves. So I think there's certainly opportunities to partner, but I think it is still just early days.
So let's change tack just a little to identity and this idea that, a question, I'm not a denizen of the metaverse as much, but are most people adopting their real life personalities as they move through Web3, or are they creating wholly new versions of themselves? Jackie, maybe this one's for you to start.
I personally think it's...
Or is that a fair question? Like, is it...
Yeah, no, it is. I always take everything back to gaming. I mean, I feel like it would be... I mean, it's a mix of it, but the beauty with Web3 is you can create somebody completely different or just beyond your imagination that has a mix of you, but allows you to also retain that, being anonymous. But yeah, I think it's a mix of it, but I think it's more so creating an identity that I guess wouldn't solely just be yourself. Because again, taking it back to gaming, creating an avatar, being in a world or being someone that you're not able to, and having the space to do that it's incredible. But also that's where I come back to talk about the fear of like losing yourself, losing, the ground roots, and being genuine to that. I feel like it's important to keep promoting that and talking about those type of things, because it can become an issue.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts here, and this is something I spend a lot of time thinking and talking about in terms of sort of pseudonymity and anonymity in Web3. And if you look at crypto Twitter, if you're familiar there, you'll see that most people have sort of a cartoon PFP, and that's the standard. I still have my real picture because I choose to maintain that, but that is certainly the exception, not the rule in kind of Web3 Twitter. And on one hand, I really like this shift because it does enable a lot of folks who otherwise perhaps may not have been taken seriously because of the color of their skin or their gender or their accent or what have you, and allows them to be seen for kind of their true contributions and not necessarily judged. So I do think there is some power there. On the flip side of that, I do worry that we risk losing a lot of our humanity by kind of masking ourselves and not being seen as humans and just being sort of pseudonyms that aren't, identifiable names and not really kind of understanding the person behind it. So to me, it's really a double-edged sword. I think it'll be really interesting to see how this evolves, because we're certainly seeing a big real shift happening already today. And I want to make sure we take the good parts of that shift, but at the same time, don't lose our humanity in the process.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jackie.
To add on to that too, I've been seeing a huge gap in terms of accountability or self-accountability, especially in this space. So it's something that we've talked a lot about in different verticals, whether it's like DeFi, in DAOs and NFTs. And it's also making sure that we stay on top of wanting to building things that are meaningful with purpose, instead of, getting caught into the hype cycles too.
Yeah. And my tie back to the panel topic was really just, if we are becoming more pseudonymous or fully anonymous, then, the more real world geographic element of a cluster does lose. And you can see more almost like these alter egos who are creating clusters online. Alex has a really interesting question. I don't know if either of you have had a chance to read it, but it's, how are NFTs and the whole space of new payment methods in Web3 potentially changing how we drive remuneration, compensation for people? Are you starting to see people get paid fully in crypto and in various tokens, or even in NFTs? Have either of you seen examples of that? I mean, that would start getting into really complex issues of taxation too, which is tied to the physical geography and a whole other topic around, where the state is going and nations are going. But either of you want to wade into that one?
Yeah, certainly. Yes, we definitely see that in kind of the crypto native world, people being compensated primarily in sort of crypto ERC20 tokens or in ETH rather than in NFTs. I haven't seen as much in the way of compensation in the non-fungible tokens, but in the fungible token space, absolutely. I would say the standard is for most DAOs that are, bigger size and have a liquid treasury, is that they will pay their contributors in their native token as opposed to in US dollars or something like that. At the Gitcoin DAO, our contributors are paid in GTC, which is the Gitcoin token, and that's the standard. There's all sorts of kind of payroll tools to help folks deal with the accounting side of things and sort of make sure that it's all legally sound. But yeah, certainly I have seen all sorts of DAOs paying out in different crypto tokens, and that is becoming increasingly the norm.
Yeah, ours has been in the company and in the program. We did a poll to see what people really preferred, and it's a mix. It's in our native token. It can be also in stablecoin, in ERC20 tokens. I haven't seen much in NFTs either, but I mean, we have been using NFTs in a sense of this company called POAP, where it's proof of attendance, where we've been able to give NFTs for people to come to workshops, and that can receive a POAP, aka NFT, as a form of certification for developing new skill sets, and it kind of builds a LinkedIn for Web3 sort of profile. But I think it is going to change in the future, but it's really dependent on the individuals. We always ask them for their feedback and what they prefer, especially depending on the jurisdictions of where they are and making sure that it falls within regulation. But yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. It's I haven't mentioned this, it hasn't come up yet, but the NFT was apparently invented in Vancouver, when CryptoKitties was developed by the small team at Axiom Zen, then Dapper Labs now. So that's a small fact for this discussion. Okay, so we're going to close it off. We've got 2 minutes left. My closing question is 10 years from now, is 2032. What is the metaverse? I mean, how are we integrating with it? What's our daily life like, rather? What's a day in the life of 2032 look like, and how is the metaverse integrated into it?
For me, I really see the metaverse being integrated in the future, and I hope to see that it's integrated into our real lives where we can actually engage with it, with people around us. So I was watching, I think it was the founders of Pokemon Go who were trying to integrate a metaverse, but in real life, where they could actually engage with people around them and look at things. So I hope that we're able to do stuff like that. But I mean, I can see it as going far as for my anime lovers, like Sword Art Online or Ready Player One, those type of movies where you're actually able to like immerse into it, or have interoperable characters jump into different metaverses, and even being able to change a whole different way of our educational system, the way that we do advertising, being able to own your own data. I'm hoping it becomes more mature, but I think we have a long ways to go still.
Yeah, I will say one thing just around terminology here, since metaverse is such a new term, that it's kind of like the term artificial intelligence, where, you know, everyone kind of gets what it is, but everyone has slightly their own definition. You know, with AI, is it just machine learning? Does it include, you know, reinforcement learning, et cetera, et cetera? With the metaverse, it's similar, you know, in that people have different perceptions on what the metaverse is. For me, I assert that we are already in a metaverse-like world to some extent. You know, we are all here on Zoom gathered, and to me, that itself is a early manifestation of the metaverse. And the metaverse, as Jackie said, will just become increasingly integrated in our day-to-day lives in ways that feel natural. To me, the metaverse in 10 years, I picture myself sitting in my living room and actually feeling like my coworkers are there with me and we're in a meeting room together, as opposed to sitting at my desk here just staring at a screen and feeling like I'm on Zoom. So I expect kind of, you know, incremental, gradual improvements that will eventually get us feeling like we're in rooms with others and, you know, traveling around the world and kind of experiencing the types of things that we would hope to experience in real life. So to me, it's not about, you know, having necessarily clunky hardware and, you know, a VR headset on all the time. I think, for what it's worth, I think for the metaverse to really manifest in a big way, the hardware needs to get much, much better and more user-friendly than it is today. Nobody wants to be wearing a VR headset for you know, 10 hours in a row. It's just not a fun experience at this point. So to me, yeah, a combination of hardware and software improvements, as well as just kind of increased sort of cultural adoption of digital native spaces, will lead us to be in a very different place in 10 years than we are now.
Thank you so much to both of you and to all of our speakers at this event. I'll ask Zara to join us again, or Zara can come back on. Annika, Jackie, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Mike.
Everyone, that wraps up this episode of City Age, Cities, AI, and the Metaverse. I want to send a big thank you once again to our sponsors, Canada-Korea Business Association, Populous, AI in BC, Vancouver's Frontier Collective, the Royal Bank of Canada, and KOTRA. Now, as a follow-up to this event, one-to-one networking opportunities facilitated by KOTRA are available. Please register at metakotra.ca. In addition to further support business development between Canada and Korea, there is an opportunity for Canadian companies to travel to Seoul with partial expenses paid, including airfare and accommodation by KOTRA, to attend the GMV 2022 in May. And for more information, please contact CKBA or KOTRA Vancouver. Thank you all for joining us today. Please go to cityage.com and subscribe for more news and follow us on social media for updates. I'm Zara Alani. Thank you so much for joining us.